For this function right here, this is going to be a little trickier. G of t is equal to 1 minus 4t. So write g of negative 3 plus h minus g of negative 3 in simplest form. So what we have to do pretty much two function values in the same problem. So this is going to be, like I said, a little trickier. So we have g of t, which is our original function, 1 minus 4t. We have to go out and find g of negative 3 plus h. So g negative 3 plus h. And we have to go out and find g of negative 3. So basically what we're doing here, we're breaking it up into two parts. Okay? So to do g of negative 3 plus h, what we have to do, we have to put in negative 3 plus h in for every t in our original function. So basically the negative 3 plus h, that's going to go in for this little t right here. So when we go out and find it, when we do our plugging and chugging, we have a g of negative 3 plus h equals 1 minus 4 times negative 3 plus h. Okay. So from here, we do 1, and then we take the negative 4, and we distribute into this parentheses right here. So basically, we're going to take this negative 4, and we're going to multiply by everything inside this parentheses. So a negative 4 times a negative 3, well, that gets us a positive 12. And then a negative 4 times a positive h, well, that gets us a negative 4h. I can draw the arrows right here too. So when we combine like terms, 1 plus 12, well, that gets us a 13. And then we have that minus 4h on the outside. Okay, so 13 minus 4h. And that is our g of negative 3 plus h part. Okay, so that's part 1. Now part 2, we got to go out and find what g of negative 3 is. So we do the same exact concept. We're going to take a negative 3, and we're going to plug it in for every t in our original function. So, in other words, g of negative 3 equals 1 minus 4 times the negative 3. Remember, that negative 3 is going to go in place of this t right here. It's going to go in for every t in our original function. So, what we got is a 1. Now, minus 4 times a minus 3, well, that gets us a positive 12. And then 1 plus 12, well, that gets us a 13. So in this particular case, g of negative 3 is 13. Okay, so now that we got both parts taken care of, now we have to combine them. Because remember, we have to do this guy minus this guy right here. So by substitution, g of negative 3 plus h, well, that was this one right here. And then g of negative 3, well, that's that right there. So g of negative 3 plus h minus g of negative 3, well, like I said, by substitution, g of negative 3 plus h is 13 minus 4h. And then minus g of negative 3, which was 13. Okay, all we did was just substituted what we found. So now we get to combine like terms. Well, we don't have another h in there. Okay, so that negative 4h is going to stay where it's at. But we have a 13 minus 13. Well, 13 minus 13, well, that goes to 0. So we have a 0 minus 4h, or just simply a negative 4h. So, in other words, what we can say is that given g of t equals 1 minus 4t, g of negative 3 plus h minus g of negative 3 equals a negative 4h. And that would be our final answer.